Hello and welcome everybody to my next tutorial video on recording PS2 games using original hardware as well as Elgato HD60 S Plus, OSSC and the OBS. Now, compared to the console that I previously talked about, the PSP, PS2 is a little bit more straightforward when it comes to recording it, as it is a home console with a standard video output. However, what is not standard is what's under the hood, and we're gonna be talking about it a little bit more in detail as we go through the different examples. First of all, the connection that I'm gonna be using in this video is going to be component. You can also use RGB if you have an OSSC in order to display pretty much every resolution except for one, but we'll get to that. I'm just using component for the ease of use in this case. Now, before we properly get started, I should introduce what kinds of resolutions are used by the PS2 and how often you can expect it. First of all, it's low definition, LD, which stands for 240p and 288p. 240p being the American and Japanese variant, and 288p being the rest of the world. Those are most common in PlayStation 1 games, which can also, of course, be played on every model of the PlayStation 2. They also are featured in a few PS2 releases, as well as a lot of the types of collections, like Mega Man Collection and stuff like that, or Sega Sonic Collection, etc., etc. Basically old games packaged on a DVD. Then we have standard definition, and standard definition pretty much sums it up. It is the most standard resolution that you're going to be encountering on the PlayStation 2. It's 480i for US and Japan, and 576i for Europe. I standing for Interlaced. More on the difference between interlaced and progressive in a moment. Next, we have enhanced definition. Enhanced definition is 480p for America and Japan and 576p in Europe. However, 576p is not an officially supported resolution on the PlayStation 2. You can, however, enable it using third-party software. Again, more on that later. And we have HD, which is 1080i. In all technicality, well, there are several officially supported games on the PlayStation 2 that use 1080i. However, none of them actually use 1080i, if we're gonna be all honest, because it's literally just 480p stretched and displayed as 1080i. It never looks good, and you're always just better off picking the 480p option. However, it is also something that you can use using third-party software on the PlayStation 2 in order to enforce it in several games, and there it does actually make sense to use it in. But again, more on that later. And now that I've talked about those, let's get into the PlayStation 2 menu. I already have started up my PlayStation 2, and I'm going to enable the view. And what the fizzity uck is this? You may be wondering. Now, this isn't actually me messing around with the preview, because this is exactly how it appears at first glance. When we go to properties, that's how it shows up. I believe this is something that's caused by OSSC transcoding 480i or 576i. It essentially gives it the resolution of 1440 pixels horizontally and 576 vertically, or 480i vertically, depending on where you live. Now, you may be wondering, why did they do that? And I have discovered that it helps to mitigate sampling errors, which are actually really common in PS2 games. It is actually something that I've encountered a lot in a lot of the previous capture software and capture devices that I've used. And I've never encountered it using Elgato with OSSC, so it must have something to do with that. Now that we're on the now that we're on the main menu, which you can access if you don't have a disk inserted, let's look at the configuration. Most of the settings that we have here are pretty much useless. Screen size doesn't really do anything, so I just leave it at full. And now we have the component video output. These options are actually similar for every single PS2 released everywhere, even those in America, which would not even, like, you cannot even buy RGB cables in America. So this is a little bit bizarre, but hey, not a bad thing. I enabled it here for YPRBR, YCRB. You can read. I can't. And if I wanted to switch it to RGB, I could choose this. And then it would mess up, so I'm just going to choose the other one. Yeah. I could enable RGB, but I would have to switch to a different mode, and I don't really want to do it right now for the sake of the recording. Now, I have mentioned interlacing before, and you may be wondering what it is. If you look closely on the screen, for example, exactly right here, or on these little balls floating in the background, you will notice that in movement these elements become basically lines. This is what we call a mouse teeth effect, and it happens in movement on interlaced video if it is displayed on let's say an LCD display or anything else that isn't a tube TV. It isn't a glitch or anything. This is just a feature of how all of the TV image and etc. was displayed back on the tube TVs. It just wasn't visible because they were too hazy or too blurry for you to notice such fine details. However, now they pose an issue because, well, getting rid of it is not as straightforward as one may think. There are multiple ways of dealing with interlacing, which is part of the reason why I decided to make this video. I have just pushed in the game that I'm going to be talking about. And once we have properly started up the game, we will talk about the various methods in which we can deal with this issue. The game that I've chosen for in order to show off some of the tips and tricks is going to be Tomb Raider Anniversary, which is an excellent game by Eidos Interactive and Crystal Dynamics, as you can see here. But yeah, in a moment you will be able to see even more interlacing. Yep, there it goes. There, all of those lines. See, this is what interlacing does. It creates nuclear reactions. That's why we need to get rid of it. And there is actually a multitude of ways in which we can do that in OBS software, which are under the convenient tab de-interlacing. Let us skip this cutscene. We don't really need it anymore. And get into the gameplay. This game I specifically chose for purposes of demonstration, because it is one of the only games I know where you can on the fly change the resolution settings on the PlayStation 2. In most other games you have to completely restart the system and press triangle and cross on startup. So yeah, as you can see, when the camera pans you get this really hazy effect, and when our busty protagonist moves into the screen, she's just covered in all of those lines. And we can't just have that. So before we actually properly get started, I should also mention something about the settings that I'm using. Because the resolution that the Elgato uses is essentially 2 times horizontally, I also made it 2 times horizontally and 2 times vertically, just to keep the correct-ish aspect ratio. And then for, if I wanted to record this, I would set it to 144 and 1080, because that way it will actually give me the proper 4:3 aspect ratio. However, you can also just record it in the exact same aspect ratio as here, and then adjust it in post, like in editing or something. You're actually probably better off doing just that. So let's just 1152. 1152 is 2 times 576i, by the way. So yeah, now that we have our protagonist and camera movement, let's do something about those lines. When we go to the interlacing menu, we have several options. I'm going to go on about them in order. Discard. You may have noticed that the resolution of the image has pretty drastically dropped. Particularly noticeable on those lamps here. You can see that they look kind of like PlayStation 1. The resolution on those lamps. It will probably be easier to notice when I disable. There you can see it's a little bit smoother now, and now discard, everything becomes more blocky. Now, oh, and also when it comes to the settings, before I completely forget, you always want to match either the frame rate or the refresh rate of the game you're playing. The current one that I have is 50 because the game runs at 50 Hertz refresh rate. I always prefer to match the refresh rate rather than the frame rate of the game. It gives you a little bit more leeway. Then we have, after discard, we have retro. Retro mode upscales each field individually, giving it a shaky look, similar to what you would get on a CRT. However, it translates horribly to recordings. And we have blend. Now, blend at first glance may actually look pretty damn good, because as you see, like, I can move this, and now for some reason it's all blurry. But now let me open the menu and close it really quickly. It's still blurry. Open the menu and close it really quickly. What I wanted to demonstrate is that it sometimes will change from the blurry imagery to non-blurry imagery when you go into a menu or change between screens, but it doesn't really want to. It doesn't really want to do that for me right at this moment. Oh, it did it just about now. I just had to complain about it. So the next mode is, so yeah, blend. It makes the image a tiny bit more fuzzy than it is normally, and sometimes in movement it will also cause like exceptional blurriness. Now blend times 2 does pretty much similar thing, but it seems like it gives a little bit more consistent results, as in it actually blurs the image consistently. It's not in a 30 FPS game. This is actually pretty good. What this mode essentially does is it takes consecutive fields and blends them together. However, unlike normal blend, it does not wait for 2 fields to appear to blend them together. It blends 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5. So it gives you a very consistent image and will consistently give you full frames and blurred frames kind of disappear in motion when you're watching the video. Here I have slowed down the footage, so you could more clearly see what's actually happening. The difference between blend and blend times 2 is that blend, if there happens to be a drop in one of the fields, so for example the game slows down or you open the menu, it will interrupt the whole process of 2 fields full frame, 2 fields full frame, 2 fields full frame, because then it suddenly becomes like where's the second one? What do I do? And then it takes takes one out of the sequence, and it causes it to give you a blurry image for until there is a next interruption, and it brings it back to the way it's supposed to be. With blend times 2, you never get that, because even if there is an interruption in the whole process, it will still be it will still be sort of in sequence, because the next one, whenever it may happen, is going to create a full unblurred frame eventually, and then there will be a blurred frame, and then there will be unblurred frame. So it is the safer out of the 2 options for a 30 FPS title or a 25 FPS title. Let's move on further. Then we have linear. Linear, I'm not exactly certain what it does. It seems to reduce the resolution of the image very, very slightly. Let's get near this lamp for comparison purposes. Come on, a little bit closer. Yeah. Let's take a look at this, and let's compare it to disable. And now let's enable linear. Yeah, it's a tiny bit more blocky, not as blocky as when you discard it. And but again, I'm not a big fan, because there is another option that's coming up which is even better, which is not this one. Is linear times 2. You can notice that this screen has become a little bit more shaky, particularly on here. It's not as hard. It's not as harsh as it is with retro, but for this game in particular, it's kind of useless. It's not as useful. However, it does get rid of all the interlacing, as you can see. And linear is also unaffected by opening a menu to interrupt the refresh rate or anything like that. And now we get to my favorite options, which is YADIF. YADIF stands for yet another de-interlacing filter. Yes, I am not making it up. And it is the overall best option out of all of them, which I would choose, which I would recommend choosing if you have no idea what you want to pick. However, there is one caveat to it, and that is if you are playing the game from the viewfinder of the OBS, from the preview of the OBS, YADIF is going to increase the input lag significantly compared to all of the other interlacing methods, which don't seem to impact it in the slightest. And YADIF X2, in this game, it isn't going to do anything. However, for a game like that runs in 60 frames per second, it is going to give you the interlaced 60 frames per second image. The regular YADIF it will cut out half of the frame rate. And I said at the beginning of the video that I specifically chose this game because it features on-the-fly changing of resolution. So we're going to do just that now. I could choose the PAL 60 mode, which is essentially NTSC in this case scenario, but it really is no difference. There really is no difference to what I have shown off right now. So let's just skip to the interesting part, which is progressive scan. In order to enable progressive scan, I will have to press the right button and then accept the changes when they show up on the screen, and then save the changes in order to actually apply them. I will do that off screen because it will mess up my recording software. One moment. Right now, we are in Progressive Scan. Now, Progressive Scan is basically, if you can get it in any game, you pick this option. It is by far the best way in order to record PlayStation 2 games. I should switch the resolution mode to something more appropriate. There we go. When Progressive Scan is enabled, you will not get any kind of interference, any kind of interlacing errors, because they no longer exist. The image is being drawn in frames as opposed in lines, so you don't have to de-interlace the image. It is just perfect as it is. So none of these options are relevant. In fact, I don't think any of them will do anything right now anymore. So yeah, if you can choose this option, go for it. I should also mention on the OSSC, there are several options for enabling higher resolution or scaling, or rather line doubling. I have not shown them for 480i because we'll talk about them in a moment with another game which actually needs it. But you can also enable them for 480p, and the results may vary depending on your preferences. I will quickly enable the 480p ×2 mode, just a moment. And now 480p ×2 mode is enabled. It doesn't look that much different. You can notice that there is some more pixelation on the text there, but otherwise it is very, very similar to what it looked before. I personally am not a big fan of 480p ×2 mode, especially for a game like this one, where there is a lot of filters at play, a lot of blur filters. It makes the image unpleasantly pixelated, especially around edges of certain objects. Let me see if I can show what I actually mean. Yeah, I can't really get a good angle at it, but it's you may like it. I am not contractually obligated to do so. So let's just move on to the next game. I will disable it and start it up. Just a moment. Alright, I will change the profile back to PAL because we're going to be showing off another European game. And I shall enable it as it is launching right now. This game, which is Eternal Ring, unlike Tomb Raider Anniversary, features, well, it is presented in 60 frames per second. And also, unlike Tomb Raider Anniversary, it has it is also rendered in field rendered graphics. If I were to explain what field rendered graphics are, I guess the best explanation would be if frame rendered graphics were a cake that you have sliced in order to create interlaced fields, field rendered graphics are a cake that was already baked, sliced, and now looks incredibly ugly when you look at it for longer than 3 seconds. We shall skip the opening cutscene because there is yet another cutscene coming up that I cannot skip no matter what I do. And it is pretty long because this game also isn't properly optimized for European regions. I shall also just stop pretending like disable the interlacing will do anything. I will, however, test the test this card, the interlacing. Because this is one of the few games where I would say this setting is actually worthwhile, because the interlacing errors present in this game are a little bit harsh, on a really harsh side. Only a few games on the PS2 have interlacing issues as significant as this one does. So this may be a relevant function for this situation. For comparison's sake, I am going to enable... We're not going to be using retro anymore. We are, however, going to use blend. As you can see, it constantly gives a blur in motion. It actually has nothing to do with me either pausing the game or unpausing it. And you can also see that whenever our character moves, or anything moves for that matter, it sort of becomes half of its initial resolution. That's just a feature of field rendering, and that's not an it's not an error on your part. You could probably notice it on the sword over there. It's not an error on your part, it's not an error on the side of the video recording software. It's just a really bad decision that Sony made when they were creating the PS2. I shall now try it with blend ×2. We'll do a little bit more proper testing in just a moment once I have control. But yeah, blend ×2, at least for now, in this really slow frame, looks pretty okay-ish. But as I said before, the stairs effect on anything that moves, that's quite inevitable. Then let's see what linear is going to do for this game. Yeah, for this game it seems that linear is actually reducing the overall resolution of the picture. Let's by like 0.5. It's not quite to the extent, and linear ×2 adds that shaky effect that simulates an old TV similar to retro. In fact, both look pretty much exactly alike. Let's see what how this looks like in when the interlacing is disabled. Pretty awful, am I right? And let's just see what this card would look like. Yeah, this card is pretty harsh. It looks like 2p instead of HP. Yeah, linear is actually not that much better. Linear ×2 we already did. Blend ×2. The interlacing is still very visible, as you can see. Regular blend. Interlacing is no longer visible, but there is a lot of haze in the picture. And in Yadif, there is no visible interlacing, and it actually looks pretty dang alright. Now let me come in here. And let's try out what Yadif ×2 is going to do. Now this looks smooth as all heck, as you can see. This is pretty much accurate to what it should look like. If we look in the distance, however, you will notice that there are several spots at which the image just sort of twitches around, or right here, or here, or here. That's just a byproduct of adaptive deinterlacing. Either live with it or enable YADF ×1, and those are not going to be bothering you anymore. However, the frame rate is going to be half of what it's supposed to be. Now, if I were to force this game into 480p with a third-party software, which I'm going to cover more extensively in just a moment, or 576p, there would be another issue at hand, which I can actually very easily simulate right over here. The whole image will look like this. That's basically what it's going to be. There is going to be one upside to it, and that is that the image will be, the game will be still rendered at 60 FPS, even though it is at lower resolution. So it's basically pick your poison. Either you have HP and you can and you deal with slightly flickery thingies on the floor that will likely be lost in the compression, or you're just going to be getting IIP. Pick your poison. Let's move on to the next example. I shall switch the game again. The next game I'm going to present, I will show off how to deal with a certain issue that a few games may have, which is switching between 240p and 480i. It's not a very common issue, however, it will happen in certain early PlayStation 2 games, as well as if you're playing one of these Legacy Collection titles. What you need to do in order to get rid of these errors is, first of all, enable 240p mode to scale ×2 and enable 480i ×2. I have tried with ×4 scaling for both of them, however the issue with transitioning between the two resolutions was still bad. However, if you enable both of them at 2, the issue will be solved. I am now switching the resolution to 480i ×2 and enable it just now. And I shall disable all interlacing settings. Perfect. And now we are ready to run this. Now, the game in question that I'm going to be showing off right now is called The Ring of Red, which is a very early strategy game released by Konami. I haven't really played it, but it does look quite interesting. And for whatever reason, it has a 240p pre-rendered intro cutscene. For what reason, I do not know, but it does have a pre-rendered FMV that's only in 240p. It is entirely possible they specifically done this because this game is on a CD as opposed to a DVD, so it allowed for better playback, possibly. But yeah, you're seeing the cutscene right now. This is in 240p scaled ×2. I'm going to skip this cutscene because there are more things to talk about in this game. You may notice that the image is all shaky. That is because of the 480i ×2 mode. We're gonna keep it for now like this, and we're gonna start a new game. Now, this game has another issue, which you may have noticed just now if you were paying attention to the blue block over here. Whenever the blue block disappears, that means the signal has dropped. And this game has signal drops for days. Literally every single menu transition, every single transition from game to map on the gameplay side of things, from briefing menu to the gameplay, or rather to the fight map, it's always dropping signal. Thankfully though, it doesn't seem to actually affect OBS that badly. You will get a black screen, but it will always come back. I have not had it mess up to the point where it would not come back. And you know, I cannot skip this cutscene. And now we're back. Now we can start up this this mission from this woman who is obviously drunk before noon. And let's skip all of the dialogue. And as you can see, it switches again, but it always comes back. And a tip, when you're advancing text in this game, always press circle, because it has the Ocarina of Time Owl syndrome, where the default option is, please tell me the last 5 minutes of text again. No. Oh. And it seems that both circle and X are confirmed here, at least for the... No, at least for the conversations. Nope, I don't want to stand by. I want to move over there and attack this one. And you will see that it also is going to change resolution, or rather turn off the image once more once we get into battle. And it just does that. Sadly, there isn't anything you can do about the signal drops. However, they're not as terrible as they could possibly be. I have dealt with worse. So let us quickly deactivate this and sort of go through the what this game is going to look like through the pass-through mode. It looks a lot less shaky right now, and because this game only runs at 30 FPS, the general best solution would be to either use Blend, or Blend times 2, or Yadev. My weapon of choice is Yadev. And let us advance really quickly and show off a little bit of gameplay, because this game isn't being talked about enough. Alright, and let us... I do not have any control over the aiming here, except for the moment where to press go. Alright, I'm going to stop it right here for now, and I'm going to go back to the PS2 menu, because there is something else we can do with this game in order to get rid of the problem with the opening cutscene. What we're going to be testing right now is going to be forcing certain resolutions in via the use of GSM. I will enable GSM using Olange, or however you are going to pronounce that. GSM is the third-party software I was talking about before, which enables you to change... There we go. I have GSM saved on my second memory card, because that's the one that not a single game can ever see. And I'm going to show you the version that I have is version 0.37. There's possibly a newer one right at the moment, but it doesn't... well, possibly it could be better. But I'm going to use this one for this for the purposes of this video. I press square button twice in order to enable to choose the mode HDTV 576p 50 Hz. I need to choose an exit, which is going to be the PlayStation 2 menu. I'm pushing the disc back in, and I'm also going to change the y-axis to -12. I generally found that to be useful in most games. because otherwise they will oftentimes go off screen. I am going to deactivate this in hopes that it's not going to mess up the recording software. I hope I wasn't too late. Alright, I wasn't. Or maybe I was. No, I wasn't, thankfully. As you could probably see or not see, the Konami logo was a lot sharper than it was before, and it didn't have that annoying shaking effect on it anymore. And as you can see, the pre-rendered cutscene works perfectly. There ain't no interruptions. Well, actually, the no interruptions part may have been a fluke, because usually there was. However, it just displays correctly in the correct aspect ratio, correct size, and everything. Because just so happens that by forcing it into 480p, it happened to be in 480p. It's not a guarantee though. Not every 240p cutscene will be forced into 480p by using GSM. GSM is a very hit and miss solution. However, with this game it's a very much hit solution because of what you're gonna see next. The transitions sadly are unaffected, but they're also not affected in a negative way, so to say. They are just as bad as they were before is what I'm trying to say. And you may also in a moment notice that some of the artwork is a little bit... it has some sampling errors, like there is ridges on these glasses. They couldn't be very comfortable. Now that is not something that's caused by GSM, or rather it is a byproduct of the game being displayed way sharper than it probably should be. And this game being a European conversion, which basically means that they had to stretch out all of the resolution vertically while still keeping the same aspect ratio. So that's why you see ridges on the symbol, like right over here. It'll probably help if I enlarged this. Yeah, you can also see it on this D here, or the symbol over here, or this R. Or for example, this thingy over there that just passed on this cutscene, or the ridges over here. It is just a feature of a lot of European conversions, but at the very least this one is being actually displayed in the correct aspect ratio and seemingly the right speed, although I have not played the American version, so I couldn't confirm one way or another. But yeah, again, just as before, I am going to wait until this unskippable cutscene ends, and we'll get to what the gameplay looks like now. Alright, and we're back. I shall disable the interlacing. It shouldn't actually do anything, but I like to disable it anyway. You can see it even more clearly here on this drunk lady's face and her hat. They're like ridges every few lines of pixels. There is ridges on everything. However, I would still say this looks very, very nice being this sharp, although you're probably gonna be better off just playing the US version. Now I want to actually start, yes. I should also mention that this game looks exceptionally good when you enable the 480p ×2 mode. Right now it's on pass-through mode, but I just thought I would mention it. I'm not gonna be enabling the 480p ×2 mode, because I don't really see much of a point. I've already shown how it works, but you can see that there is nothing shaking. Everything looks really crisp, real nice. There isn't any really any interlacing errors because interlacing is not present. Let us skip past everything that he has to say yet again. No. Alright. Let's move, attack, and just basically do the same thing as we did before. And just as it was with the 480i mode or 576i mode, the entire image basically what was I gonna say? The screen transitions, they're still messed up. And like I said before, there isn't anything you can do about it. Okay, the cannon is not armed yet, we have to... Okay, now it's armed. And we're going to shoot right over here. So yeah, just as before, whenever you can choose for a progressive scan, choose for progressive scan. There is never a downside to it, so long as it works. Not every game will work correctly with GSM. Some of them will not start up, some of them will crash on a cutscene, and others will display at half the resolution they're supposed to, like for example Eternal Ring would, or they would display at some bizarre place in the screen. Others would completely lose their frame locking that actually happens in the Persona games on the PS2. And basically they will just go as fast as a given given scene allows, which just isn't how PS2 games are meant to function. But there are some positive examples, so like the one I'm gonna show now. Now, we have two more examples to go through. And the first one is actually a game that has a side effect when being used with a GSM. However, that side effect is actually very positive, at least in my personal opinion. I'm going to currently off-screen enabling 576p in GSM for the purposes of this showcase. I should also mention that enabling GSM in 576p is only possible via component connection. It is possible to enable 480p via the RGB or RGSB. However, yeah, the component will not function with it for whatever reason. It may just be related to the model of the PS2 that I'm using, which is one of the early ones that still has a firewire attached to it. But I can't say if it's true or not true for the other ones. So right now I have already enabled the 570. Oh no. Alright, I have salvaged it. Yeah, everything is correct. This game that we are going to be using right now is Forbidden Siren 2. Now, I will skip showing off what this game looks like without the forcing 480p enabled, because the side effect of it running in 576p is, well, I would have to describe what it does anyway. So this game, similarly to say Silent Hill 2, has a certain degree of post-processing effects that cause like noise effects, and it kind of overdoes it with some of them. One such effect is a vertical scanline filter, which is essentially just murder on your compression. which is why I particularly don't like it. It causes the image to have a lot more detail than it actually does, and with YouTube limits on compression, just looks like trash. Now, if you enable the progressive mode, that post-processing effect gets skipped entirely, and you don't get to see it. It's very, very, very minor, so you wouldn't even be able to see it if you if I were to show it to you in the interlaced mode. Right now we're in progressive mode, but that effect would just not probably not show up for most people on this video, especially since the view is smaller. I should also address the elephant in the room, which is the aspect ratio. You may have noticed that it is now squished, and that is also another feature of the of a lot of PlayStation 2 games, and that is the squished horizontal resolution. It is very common, especially with the later games on the system. And the easiest way to fix this issue is to, when enabling progressive scan mode, is to stretch the image to full widescreen mode. That way, coincidentally, the aspect ratio will be kept at will be kept appropriately. So, right now, after I have stretched it to 16:9, it is displaying the correct aspect ratio. I will wait until this cutscene ends to just sort of try to show off what I'm talking about. Maybe I'll add a screenshot in editing, so I can make my point a little bit more clear. You would have to take my word for it anyway. So there, we can finally move. So let us walk here and stare at it for a little bit, while the future me is going to put a proper comparison photo of this specific place, hopefully showcasing what the error I was talking about, or rather what the post-processing effect I was talking about before looks like. But yeah, just as with enabling progressive scan with Ring of Red, there are no more no interlacing is present. Resolution is perfect, although in case of this game it is never going to be particularly sharp because of all of the other post-processing effects that do not get disabled. However, it's actually good that they don't, because they add to the atmosphere. Now I'm going to switch this to the last game that I want to talk about. Alright, and we're back. This time I'm not gonna be even fixing this. This time I'm going to be showing off a PlayStation 2 game which can be enforced into 1080i. The program that you're seeing right now is OPL, Open PS2 Loader. The last version, at least from the ones that I have, offers you an option to enable GSM per game basis, so specific GSM settings for specific games. For this one in particular, I have 1080i enabled, so it runs every single time that 1080i is launched. I'll start it up right now, in just a moment. And there we go. The game is starting up. I have the 1080i mode enabled to line ×2. And I have also went into the sampling section and set the upsample mode to ×2, because it's very helpful for this one. as it tends to look overly sharp. And there's also one extra step that I like to do for this game in particular, or any game that uses 1080i, and that is to change the low pass filter setting to EDTV. I'll show off in a moment what it does in a little bit more detail. You may also notice that the aspect ratio is completely out of whack. We will fix that in just a moment. Let us get into this and scale filtering, the interlacing. No, the interlacing can stay as it is on nothing. Stretch to fit the screen, and then let's use transform settings to edit transform and crop up top. I will say that's about like 200 pixels. It may be a little bit too much. 150. That may still be too much, but I can't tell right at this moment. Let us wait until the cutscene passes, then I can stop and finish the adjustments. Yeah, Mika, I don't care what you have to say. There we go. Yeah, 150 is too much. Let's just lower it down. And at the bottom, I'm gonna say like 70 for now, and increase it a little bit more. And there we go. Well, doesn't that just look fancy? Now, there is still something that's a little bit... Actually, I've already fixed this issue before, so that's why it remembers the settings. But let's say I had this at 60 FPS. You will notice, particularly on this health bar, or rather shield bar, that it is flashing like really quickly and really hard. And the image moves very slightly up and down because 1080i is interlaced and it is being upscaled, so it does have the similar effect as Bob the Interlacing. What we should, how you get rid of this, in case of this game, the best way is to just use 29.97. Another way, all of the shaking is gone, because the shaking appears from it moving between two subsequent frames, up and down, up and down. So if you remove one of them, it's only going up. You only show the upward one or the bottom one. And because this game runs in 30 frames, I checked it before. There is no downside to this. You could still enable the mode to be pass-through and enable some of the interlacing settings from OBS, like YADIF and etc. But I have not actually run into many games that run in 1080i that do not run in that run in anything higher than 30 FPS. Now let me go through the low pass filter settings real quickly. I currently have the low pass filter set to EDTV, which is my preferred setting. The SDTV, as you may notice, is a little bit fuzzier. I generally don't like using it for this particular one because it appears a little bit too fuzzy. Now I have enabled the automatic one, which will enable something like HDTV 1 or 2. And I'm not a big fan of this setting because I feel that it makes everything appear too pixely. This game does not suffer from it as badly because a lot of the textures are very pixely and there is very little filtering applied to anything. So it turns out just fine. HDTV2, HDTV1 both yield similar effects, and EDTV is, in my opinion, just a hair better, and it's just sharp enough to be significant, a significant improvement, but not too sharp to the point where it destroys the look of the letters or look of the textures, as it often does. But yeah, that is pretty much everything I wanted to... this is pretty much everything I wanted to talk about in this video. I hope this was helpful to you, and if you have any other specific PS2 related, PS2 recording or otherwise recording console issues, then you can definitely ask me in the comments. I will try to help you as best as I can. It was fun making this video, and I hope at least 5 people will find it useful for their evil purposes.